Okay, so you want to start a chatter agency. Rent a small office, or honestly, don't even bother with the office, hire a dozen people to message people online, and just sit back while the money rolls in. That's basically the pitch you'll see in some Discord server or a grainy YouTube ad at 2 in the morning. But here's the strange part. This is one of the fastest growing, least understood service businesses on the internet, generating what industry estimates put in the billions of dollars a year, and yet the actual unit economics look almost nothing like people assume. Anyway, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how a chatter agency makes its money, why the margins are so much thinner than they look from the outside, why some agencies scale into 6 and 7 figures a month while others quietly implode after 90 days, and why this business isn't really about chatting at all. It's about labor arbitrage, data, and retention math dressed up as a side hustle. So let's back up. OnlyFans itself is a platform, not an agency. Creators post content, fans subscribe, and OnlyFans takes a flat 20% cut of everything: subscriptions, tips, pay-per-view messages, all of it. That's the platform's business, and it's clean. But here's the thing, the platform doesn't make the sale. A subscription just gets someone through the door. The actual revenue, the stuff that turns a creator from making a few $100s a month into 50 or 100,000, comes from what happens after the follow in the direct messages. Someone has to be there, replying, building rapport, upselling custom content, closing pay-per-view messages, at basically all hours across dozens or hundreds of conversations at once. Creators figured out fast that they physically cannot do this themselves and also produce content and also have a life. So a market appeared to fill that labor gap. That market is the chatter agency. Think of it like a call center that got bolted onto an influencer economy. Except instead of selling extended warranties, the product is intimacy, attention, and access, and the sales script is built entirely around psychology, not features and benefits. That's the metaphor to hold onto for this whole video. A chatter agency is a sales floor wearing a costume. Now let's talk about how the money actually flows, because this is where most people get the picture wrong. A chatter agency doesn't get paid by OnlyFans. It gets paid by the creator, usually as a percentage of the revenue the chatters generate, commonly somewhere in the range of 20 to 50% of net earnings, depending on how much of the business the agency is running. Some agencies just handle chatting. Others run the whole operation: marketing, content scheduling, subscriber acquisition, chatting, analytics, and for that full-service version they'll take a bigger slice, sometimes north of 50%. Here's where it gets interesting. The agency isn't just taking a cut of revenue, it's also carrying almost all of the labor cost. A single profitable creator account often needs coverage in 3 shifts to cover roughly 24 hours, because fans message at all hours across every time zone, and a chatter who goes quiet for 6 hours is basically leaving money on the table that a competitor account or a competitor agency will happily pick up. So multiply that by however many creators the agency manages, and you start to see the actual shape of the business. It's not one glamorous account making passive income. It's a rotating shift-based labor operation, more like a restaurant kitchen than a marketing firm. Let's put real numbers on this because the math is where the story gets good. Say an agency signs a mid-tier creator pulling in $40,000 a month in gross revenue. The agency takes a 30% cut, so that's $12,000 coming to the agency from this one account. Sounds great, except now subtract the chatters. A decent chatting team for one active account might run 3 people covering 3 8-hour shifts, and chatters are typically paid either an hourly rate, somewhere around $3 to $8 an hour depending on where they're hired from, or a small commission on sales they personally close, often around 5 to 10% of what they individually generate. Agencies frequently blend both, a low hourly base plus commission, because a pure hourly rate gives chatters zero incentive to actually sell, and a pure commission rate means chatters won't show up during slow hours when nobody's buying. That blended structure alone can eat somewhere between 15 and 30% of the agency's cut on that single account once you add in a shift lead or a manager checking quality control. And that's before you count the tools. Agencies pay for tracking software to monitor chatter performance and conversation quality, sometimes translation tools if the chatting team is overseas managing English-speaking fan bases, and management overhead for the person recruiting, training, and firing chatters, because turnover in this industry is brutal. Burnout is extremely high. Reading hundreds of messages a day, performing a persona convincingly for hours at a stretch, and hitting sales targets is genuinely exhausting work, and a lot of chatters quit within the first few months. So training cost isn't a one-time expense, it's a recurring one. baked permanently into the model. So on that $40,000 account generating $12,000 for the agency, once you pay the chatting team, the shift lead, the software, and account for a slice of general overhead like recruiting and admin, the agency might actually keep somewhere around $4,000 to $6,000 in real profit from that one creator. That's roughly a 10 to 15% margin on the gross revenue the account generates, which, by the way, is a completely normal margin for a labor-heavy service business. It's just nowhere near the chatter's make-you-rich overnight pitch that gets thrown around online. Here's the thing that makes this business either extremely profitable or a total disaster, and it comes down to one word: retention. Not subscriber retention, though that matters too, but chatter retention and creator retention, because both sides can walk away at almost any time. A creator who feels like the chatting quality dropped, or who sees a competing agency promising a smaller cut, can leave with almost zero switching cost. And a chatter who's underpaid, overworked, or poorly trained can just vanish mid-shift, and now the agency has an unmanned inbox and a furious client. So the entire business model rests on a fragile two-sided relationship. Agencies need star chatters to keep creators happy, and they need happy, well-paying creators to keep chatters from jumping to a competitor. The agencies that actually scale figure out a few specific levers. First, they build scripts and personas, not word-for-word robotic scripts, but frameworks, tone guides, upsell sequences, so that even an average chatter can perform close to the level of a great one. This is the same logic McDonald's used to standardize a burger. Take a skill that used to require a talented individual and turn it into a repeatable process anyone can execute with training. Second, they invest heavily in data. Which time of day converts best for which type of fan? Which message sequences lead to the highest pay-per-view purchase rate? Which chatters have the best close rate? The agency's treating this like a real sales operation, with actual conversion funnels and key performance indicators, consistently outperform the ones treating it like a group chat with a paycheck attached. Third, and this is the one people underestimate, they diversify across many creators instead of betting everything on one or two big accounts. One creator having a bad month, getting banned, or leaving for another agency can wipe out a huge chunk of revenue overnight if that account is 40% of your business. Spread across 20 or 30 accounts of varying sizes, one bad month barely dents you. Now here's why some agencies fail despite what looks like guaranteed math on paper. The spreadsheet says take a cut of revenue, pay chatters less than that cut. Keep the difference. Simple. Except three things quietly destroy that plan in practice. The first is quality collapse. Once an agency scales past a certain point, quality control gets harder, chatters start copy-pasting generic messages, response times slow down, and fans notice immediately because the entire product is the illusion of a real, attentive connection. The moment that illusion cracks, revenue on that account can drop 30 or 40% within weeks. The second killer is chargebacks and refunds, because pay-per-view content that gets pushed too aggressively leads to disputes, and disputes eat straight into margin that was already thin. The third, and probably the most common, is that new agencies underprice themselves to win clients in a crowded, low-trust market, taking a 15 or 20% cut instead of 30, because everyone's competing on price in the early days, and then they can't actually afford to pay chatters enough to keep good ones around, so quality drops and the whole thing spirals. So what does a genuinely profitable version of this business look like? Picture an agency running 25 creator accounts, averaging $15,000 a month each in gross revenue. So about $375,000 flowing through the agency's managed accounts monthly. At a blended 30% cut, that's roughly $112,000 in agency revenue. After paying a lean, well-trained chatting team, a couple of shift managers, software, and overhead, a well-run agency at that scale might land somewhere around a 20 to 25% net margin. So call it $25,000 a month in actual profit, split among however many owners or partners are running it. That's a real business. Not a fantasy, not a scam, a legitimate, labor-intensive operation that happens to sit inside an industry most people feel awkward talking about, which is exactly why so few people understand how the money actually moves. And that's really the whole story here. A chatter agency isn't selling chatting. It's selling reliability at scale in an industry where the product is fundamentally about human attention, which is the hardest thing in the world to standardize and the easiest thing in the world to fake badly. The agencies that treat it like a real operations business with training, data, and diversified risk quietly print money. The ones that treat it like easy passive income burn out their chatters, lose their creators, and disappear within a year. Same math on the spreadsheet, completely different outcome in real life. Which, if you think about it, is true of almost every business that looks simple from the outside.